Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Matthew Jones. I'm the Adult Services Coordinator at Sandwich Public Library, and we just want to start by saying thank you for tuning in. We see lots of those who are here are friends, so hello, welcome, glad that you're here, and we look forward to our time together this morning. Just want to start by saying welcome to Hannah, who's going to present to us. Our staff, most of our staff got to sit in on these sessions in another forum, and I instantly knew I have to have Hannah come and share this with our community. So we're very excited that she's here, and this is a two-part webinar. So we'll have the first part this morning today, and next week at 10 a.m. on Tuesday morning, we'll be back, and so we'd invite you to join us for that as well. Just a few other announcements. I just want to introduce Hannah. She's the founder of Soulside Healing Arts in Peoria, Illinois. And she'll tell us a little bit more about that at the end of our session this morning, which we want to hear about because there are some awesome opportunities for us to visit Soulside online these days, and we want to know about that. We also, at the end of our session, may have some time for Q&A. So you can see down at the bottom of your screen a place to chat or submit a Q&A. And so you can go ahead and familiarize yourself with those options. And if you just want to post in the chat and say hello so you can try that out, you're free to do that now as well. And at the end of the session, I will read your questions out loud, so feel free to ask them at any point, and we'll ask those then at the end. So I'd like to start by turning it over to Hannah. Welcome, Hannah.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for tuning in and being here. Like Matthew said, if you do want to just send a little hi, hello in the chat, it'd be nice to make sure everyone can have access to the chat box. Make sure that the little 2: is at all panelists and attendees. There's a little drop-down box there so that the attendees can also see your chat and not just the panelists if you do send something over. Hi, good morning. Thank you. All right, so I did want to start with a chat anyway and just see if you would be comfortable sharing what movement practices you already have going on, and it's okay to say none, but kind of like things that are habitual for you. So not so much like you went to a yoga studio once 10 years ago, but like you go on a walk every day, or you do some kind of weightlifting or running or whatever it is that has become your habit for movement. And I would just love to see kind of where everyone's at so that if discussion leads me there, I know kind of where you are already. And I may just kind of leave it there so I know, because this will be recorded and broadcasted out to more people. So I don't want to keep it centered around the attendees today, but available to everyone who accesses it later too. But I do think others will be interested to see what kind of habits our attendees have. So as Matthew said, my name is Hannah Ramlo. I am the founder and director of Soulside Healing Arts, which is a nonprofit yoga studio in Peoria. And what we do is provide up to 20 or at least 20 classes a week that are in the studio that are all donation based or pay as you can. So our mission is to expand access to holistic wellness practices beyond financial and physical boundaries and restraints. So all of those classes have been taken online. We've done a lot of pre-recorded classes. I'll talk more about that at the end, but they're still pay as you can. So our language and our model is to encourage those who can afford to pay market rate or higher for classes to do so. So then they're subsidizing classes for individuals who are going through some kind of financial crisis to be able to still access holistic wellness and mindfulness, which we believe then serves the entire community. So that's what we do. That's our mission. And then when we get to do things like this and work with different employers or corporate entities or organizations like your library, we are able to then subsidize taking our practices into sliding scale services in social service agencies and schools. So we then go meet people where they're at in their healing journey, and often meet people who had no idea that a yoga studio would be some place for them to heal from whatever traumas they're going through. Myself and all of our teachers are trauma-informed yoga instructors, so we've done extensive studying on how yoga and mindfulness can help mitigate the lasting effects of trauma. I'm going to just touch on that really briefly before we get started today, because whether or not you have experienced this collective trauma that we're going through landing in your body as anxiety or tension, it's my belief that you might, or likely you will at some point. And that's kind of the crux of trauma-informed yoga, is that extreme stress, extreme change, and traumatic events play out in the theater of the body. So kind of like a really, really brief introduction to that is looking at the fight or flight mentality that happens when somebody does get faced with a traumatic experience. We know, right, that our bodies, our brains, our amygdala, this like fear center of our brain, recognizes something as a threat and then tells our body to pump out different kinds of hormones to react to that threat. So cortisol and adrenaline, these stress hormones that get us ready for action, get us ready to fight or to flee from that threat. But today, mostly in the modern world of trauma, we don't actually get the chance to fight or to flee. We most likely freeze instead and have to endure whatever that traumatic event is. So there's this whirlwind, this current of stress hormones pumping through our body, but we don't actually get the chance to use them, to put our muscles into action and to use that fear response. So what is being studied by psychiatrists is what happens then. Those things get stuck in the body and come out in forms of chronic pain, anxiety, tension, depression. So mindful movement and meditation and breath is a tactic to kind of notice the emotional state you're in and then move through it and let those things get moved out of the body. So that's all I'm going to say on that for now, but if it's really interesting work to you, I would recommend the book, The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. I'm going to put that in the chat right now. The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. He's a leading psychiatrist in the field of healing trauma through yoga and mindful movement and meditation. So if this is interesting to you at all, that is a must read for sure. But today in the webinar, we'll learn a couple breath techniques and movement techniques that you can do every single day. They're holistic, they're accessible, that just get things moving, that get things circulating. And we can kind of zoom out from everything I just talked about to the lens of a more broad sense of traditional Eastern medicine. And the goal in all of that is to get things moving, right? To move your chi down through your energy lines, through your meridian lines. And that's what yoga and breath is doing as well. So there's kind of this overarching belief that stagnancy and rigidity are what lead to dis-ease and discomfort. So everything I'm bringing to you, everything I'm teaching is really just an effort to reduce stagnancy. So I absolutely don't mean to say that yoga is the only way to do that, but it is a very sustainable way to do that, where some other movement techniques can be sort of intense for intensity's sake. And yoga kind of looks at how to make sure your movements will take you into old age and keep things moving for as long as possible. And it does look like some of our attendees get some movement and yard work, absolutely. There's all kinds of ways to make your movement yogic. So using yard work as your mindful movement practice is something I encourage all my yogis to be doing right now who are getting antsy without being able to go to the studio. Okay, so let's get into it. And then at the end, if you do have questions, you can feel free to send them anytime in the chat, and then we'll get to them at the end, or you can write them down and send them in later. We start in all yoga classes, we start with breath. And the reason is that breath is accessible to everybody. Everyone can do yoga because everybody can breathe. And we call it pranayama in yoga. Pranayama is in Sanskrit, prana means life force energy and yama means control. So pranayama is control of your life force energy. And it's taught in yoga practice that pranayama should be very individualized, because one person who maybe has asthma or a high anxiety level, we teach them a pranayama, a yogic breath technique, and it might send them into or trigger them into more stress. But that same technique could be exactly what someone needs who is extra lethargic, to kind of get them moving and get them like pumped up a little bit. So as we learn a few breath techniques, the first key to pranayama is awareness, is breath awareness of where you're at and how breath affects your body. And I'd say that's true for yoga, but any movement practice, you have to know that for your running practice, your weightlifting, whatever it is, how to control your breath to serve you, to benefit you. So as we move through some breath techniques today, I encourage you to notice if anything is sort of like speeding up your heart rate more or making you feel more triggered or more stressed, then that practice is not for you. That's for someone else. So, take a step back and just breathe naturally and breathe normally. It's just an important piece to understand. So try it and explore, but understand that at the root of yoga and pranayama is really these individual needs and benefits for different bodies. All right, so with awareness being the first step, I'm going to invite you now to find a comfortable seat. You can stay in a chair, you can sit on the floor, but wherever you find yourself, make sure that your spine is able to rise straight and that your feet are below your hips. So if you are sitting cross-legged on the floor, give yourself a cushion or a pillow underneath your hips so that you're lifted a little bit off the ground and your knees and feet are falling away from your hips. And then settle back into your posture. So give yourself a moment to close your eyes and find your shoulders over your hips. Your hands can land wherever they go naturally. Take a moment to soften the muscles in your face, your jaw, your cheeks, your eyes, your forehead. And for a moment, just notice where your breath is moving in your body. Is it coming in the nose? Is it coming in the mouth? Is it staying in the throat, in the head, in the chest? Or is it going into the rib cage and stomach and back? No need to change anything. Just allow yourself to be present with what already is. Is it flowing smoothly or is it kind of catching? Is it rough? And one more time, just notice where in your body does your inhale go? You can open your eyes. Very often when I do this in person, I'll ask people to place a hand where they feel their breath. And most often I see hands like here. People notice their breath is staying in their chest, in their throat, in the back of the throat, in the head. It's a shallow breath, and we're all very familiar with that shallow breath. We're not using the full extension of our lungs very often. However, there's been lots of studies that show chronic disease and pain and dis-ease, not necessarily a diagnosable disease, it can often stem from simply not bringing enough oxygen into our body's systems. So just expanding our breath, just bringing more oxygen in through our inhale can prevent some of these lasting effects of chronic pain and trauma. So now we'll change our breath a little bit to make it more full. So know that it's very common to experience that shallow breath, and we all have different levels of muscles around our lungs. So as you start to develop these breath practices, it's really common to feel uncomfortable with it at first. But again, I invite you to sit tall, find your shoulders over your hips, close your eyes again, and come into that softness of the face. So there's no need to see me, you can just hear me. Soft eyes, closed eyes, soft jaw, soft cheeks, soft forehead, shoulders relaxed away from your ears. And this time start to breathe in and bring your breath down to your low lungs or belly, and then up to the middle, the rib cage, and then up to the collarbone. So this yogic 3-part breath fills your inhale from the low belly to the collarbones, and then release it out, and practice that a few times. You can visualize filling a cup of water. It starts at the bottom and fills to the top. So you have to allow your belly to expand a little bit, some space to grow, which is something we're taught not to do. So that takes some brain power in itself. And then keep going with that to your comfort level. It doesn't need to be forceful, but a little bit lower, a little dropped breath down into the belly, rising up. And at the same time, start to notice this multi-dimensional aspect of your breath. So it's not just rising from the bottom to the top, it's also spherical. It's pressing back and forward, diagonally, and come into this acceptance or awareness of your multi-dimensional breath. If you feel your back against a chair or the wall, you can feel your breath moving backwards into your back body, into the lungs that go backwards against that chair or against the surface. So in yoga, we practice stretching the lungs even. You might even feel some of the muscles moving, some like cracks as you breathe, because we're expanding into this like upper back space with breath that maybe you haven't done before. Let it all out. So there's no need to stay in that kind of depth all the time. I don't think anybody does that, but I think it's a good place to come back to when you notice your mind spinning or you're getting into some kind of emotional rabbit hole, just to come back to the presence of where is my breath in my body, and can I readjust? Can I reorient? Can I remap the sphere of my breath? Okay, so that's step one. Of any yoga practice is awareness, and then pranayama, or control of breath. And then we'll get into some movement. And at this point, I'm going to have Matt share a PDF that I made for you that goes through just like a daily movement routine that you could take into your everyday life. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. And you'll understand this more. If you've had a yoga practice before, you're going to recognize some of these things, but we'll go through them together. 2, 3, this is 5. Yeah, 5 things that if I could have everybody do every single day, these are the 5 things I would have you do. And that's because they work with the biggest muscle groups and biggest joint groups in our body, but mostly the spine and the hips. So let's get into some of this a little bit. If you would like to save this, I think Matthew's going to post it on the website, but you could also screenshot it here to save on your desktop and have handy in the future when you want to remember what those 5 movements were. We'll open this again at the end too, but I'm going to go ahead and close it now so that you can see me as we go through some of these movements. Thank you. Okay, so make sure you have space. Again, you can be in a chair or seated. I'm going to do it from a chair, so if you want to kind of be able to see and mirror me, you might want a chair as well. Make sure that you have your tall spine and you're sitting kind of forward in your chair for these first movements. Hands come on your thighs or your knees, and then you pull your chest forward and arch your spine as you look up, and take a big inhale breath. As you exhale, press your spine towards the back of your chair and tuck your chin in. Press your belly button back. So see if you can find that arch. Inhale, pull forward. Pull your shoulder blades towards each other in the back. Lift the gaze. Take an inhale. Exhale, press back. Pull the shoulders forward. Press your spine back. So this is cat-cow. As we pull forward, this is cow posture. We're making our bellies big towards the ground. We're usually on all 4s, hands and knees, when we do this in a yoga class. So you can imagine a cow, big belly dropping forward, and then exhale, arch the spine back. This is like an angry cat or a stretching cat, arching its spine. So take a few more rounds, feet planted right underneath the knees. Inhales forward, exhales back. And flow with your breath, your rhythm, your movement, your speed of breath. One way to speed this up and make yourself a little more like re-energized, so kind of like a midday energy lift that I like to do, is start slow, but then speed up your breath so you're looking more like close your eyes so you don't get too dizzy. Take your chin with you, your neck, and kind of whip it out a little bit. All right, let's pause in the middle. Find neutral. Breathe. Good. Next, we have thoracic twists. So thoracic spine is this upper back. It's the spine behind the heart. Very often where we feel the most tension or the most pain is not really where that pain originates. So I hear a lot of low back pain complaints. And one thing that I always recommend for low back pain is thoracic spine mobility, because we often see that as we get older, we develop sort of that hunch in the upper back. And as we have desk jobs or things that keep us sort of in this posture, we're driving or we're on our phones or we're on our computers, that gets larger and larger. And then the low back has to compensate for that weight that's now been shifted instead of honoring the natural spine curves. So what we're going to do now is work on that upper back thoracic spine mobility with twists. So take your hands out to a T and then take your fingers to your shoulders, fingers forward, thumbs back, or if that's not accessible, hands can come to the middle of your heart here with prayer hands. So then take an inhale to center and exhale to twist, and think about that twist coming from your belly button up, so you're not moving your knees or your hips, and then inhale to center and exhale to twist. And keep going. Inhale, centers, exhale, twists, and just see if you can get a little deeper from that belly button up, that spiral of the spine. Again, take your chin and your gaze with you so that the spiral, that twist, goes all the way up the back of the neck. The spine continues to the crown of the head. And then again, if that fast pumping breath movement felt good, and remember it's very individualized, you can speed this up as well and kind of get this like nice refreshing twist movement by being inhale to center. Kind of pumping your exhale breaths out your nose and taking a little sniff in the middle. All right, let's come to center and release, come to neutral, and maybe take a cat-cow movement in between, just kind of like reorient, remap, and get tall again in your spine. And then we have our forward fold. So from your chair, I would invite you to widen your knees to diagonal, so they're pointing out to the sides, and start to fold forward, resting your arms on your thighs and keeping a straight spine. And then at some point, start to tuck your chin, and maybe your mobility allows you to touch the floor and pull yourself all the way down into a fold. But wherever you stop is fine. You're still getting this kind of hip opener and this little bit of an inversion. You're starting to reverse the blood flow so that it's going to your head instead of how we spend most of our days. And then let's do a standing forward fold too. So standing up from your chair. Make sure your legs are about hip distance apart and softly bend your knees. And then same thing, bend your knees, take your hands to your thighs, and start to fold forward with that straight spine, bringing your belly to your thighs. So eventually, maybe your head starts to fall forward, and your hands can hold on to opposite elbows to bring your weight down a little bit. Tuck your chin so the back of the neck is long, and hang out. Come up whenever you need to. But let me just share, a lot of times people feel like a forward fold in yoga is impossible because you can't touch the floor. And I just want to emphasize that that's not the point. It's not about lengthening the hamstrings, although you can get there eventually, but keep a nice bend in your knees, bring your chest down to your thighs. And a forward fold is more about that inversion, that getting the head beneath the hips so that your blood flow can recirculate in a new way. So slowly rise back up, come back to your chair. And just a couple more. We have hip balance or hip openers. So I mentioned the spine and the hips being the biggest joints and muscle groups in the body that affects the mobility everywhere else. And just a quick note on hip openers. If you have a desk in a chair and you're there all day long, you're only allowing your hips to stay in this kind of forward plane. And then even if you have a walking or a running practice, your still in this forward plane. So find ways to open your hips. And one way is to sit with one ankle up on your thigh as your knee comes out to the side. And I think that we're kind of taught that this is like a rude way to sit, so you may have to do it in the privacy of your home or the privacy of behind your desk, but do it. It's really good for your glute. And if this is easy for you, start to hold onto that front calf or shin and start to pull yourself forward. So you're lengthening the spine and you're bringing your heart to that leg. And you might feel a little bit more of a stretch in that outer hip. Breathe. Inhale to rise back up, and we'll switch sides. So plant that leg, bring your other leg up. Inhale here, and then exhale, slowly fold forward, pull your spine straight. If this is not available to you, based on your mobility levels, you can stack books or blocks or something underneath your foot on the opposite side. So you start to kind of find the mobility as you lift that height, whatever it is. So you don't have to be all the way here all at once. And then the other thing I would suggest is take your desk to the floor every once in a while so that you're having to sit cross leg, open leg, you're opening your hips. This will help too. So bring your desk to the floor or bring your knees up into your chair. And then last movement piece is balances. So again, I would say stand behind your chair. And the reason I encourage some balances in your daily movement is because if we're sitting all the time, then our glutes and our hips get really stagnant and they're not building muscle. So to counter that, we would do some balance exercises. So I would say lean into your right foot and lift your left foot behind you. Keep your hips and knees square to the chair and hold on if you need to, or don't if you don't. If you don't need to, take your hands to center at the heart and lean forward. So you're trying to create this long diagonal line from the crown of the head to that back heel. Inhale here. Hold for an exhale. And then inhale to lift your knee forward and stand up. And maybe again, you're not holding the chair. So this would be a flow you could come into with breath. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale to stand. For example, there's all kinds of balances. There's tree balance in yoga, where you would take your foot to your thigh and then try to keep everything lifted and straight and square. Your foot to your calf muscle is good here too. But like reactivating and re-engaging the hips and glutes in your balances. Let's do the other leg just to be even. So lean into your left side, right leg comes up. And then match it to breath. It doesn't matter. You can pull your inhale forward, exhale forward, whatever. Just make sure it's your rhythm and you're reconnecting to the awareness of your breath. All right, go ahead and return to your seat. Shake it out a little bit, wiggle it out. Make sure you come back to a tall spine. And then I'm just gonna do one more breath exercise, and we'll touch more on some breath techniques on next Tuesday as well. But as you sit in your chair and you come back to your tall spine, come back to that postural cue of stillness. So your shoulders are stacked over your hips. Your chin comes slightly down, so you lengthen the back of your neck. Soften your face muscles, close your eyes. And come into a full breath, just like we practiced, dropping your inhale down to your low belly. We'll come into a breath pattern here. So breathing in through your nose. Breathe out with a sigh. Breathe in like you're breathing through a straw. And out through your nose. And then we'll do that again. In through your nose. Out with a sigh. In through a straw. Out through your nose. Keep going. Stay soft in your face muscles. Keep going and incorporate everything you already learned about your belly breath, your multidimensional breath, so don't lose the fullness. Take one more round. Make it sustainable, not forceful. When you finish, come back to a natural breath. Close your mouth, if possible. Breathe through your nose. Keep your eyes soft and closed. Just notice anything you notice coming so internal that you can feel any little shifts of energy, vibrations. And this is where we'll end today. We are all prepped for a meditation. So if we were doing a full practice, we would do a little breath movement, more breath into meditation. So you might feel maybe in your body that you would be ready to kind of sit in stillness and meditate. And we'll talk more about the techniques for getting into meditation on Tuesday. But this is the traditional way of leading yourself into a meditation, movement, breath, meditation. So that's all from me today. Let me know if you have any questions, if anything came up, and then I'll just mention one more time and I'll put our website here, soulsidehealingarts.com. And if you go there, the first big link on the front homepage is our virtual studio where we have, I think, more than 20 pre-recorded videos from our different teachers. They're all available at pay-as-you-can rates, so you can pay a sliding scale between $1 and $30 for each video, and then you have access to it for all time. So if you're getting interested into this kind of stuff, your purchase of our videos is helping our nonprofit continue to build revenue for sliding scale funds or sliding scale services in social service agencies and schools, and continuing to offer practices at a sliding scale level in our studio. So we would greatly appreciate it if you check it out, if you're being pulled in that direction. We have some beginners classes, some chair classes, restorative and yin yoga classes are very slow and relaxed and all about kind of easing into mobility, and then some more fast-paced classes like vinyasa and mindful flow, which get the body moving at a little bit more of an intense speed. But all focus on breath, all touch on stuff that we've done today. So I appreciate you being here. Thank you very much. I'm not seeing any questions, so, but you can reach out to me too through that website. There's a contact page, so if you think of something later, please feel free to send us an email. I'm here in my house also, so I have some time to engage and answer those if anything does come through.
Thank you so much for being with us, Hannah, and we'll look forward to next Tuesday at 10 o'clock, and we'll see you then. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Take care, everyone.